can say what you have to say, 'cause my mind's made up anyway. I'm taking the high road, going above you. This is the last time that I'm gonna trust you. You can say what you have to say, 'cause my mind's made up anyway. All that bullshit you talk might work a lot, but it's not gonna work today.
You people are running off the mouth, trying to make me take myself off safety, trying to make my friends turn their backs on the team we built, building up some mistaken information, and I can't take this.
I guess the first and foremost question is, do you feel educated?
Yes.
Do you feel educated? I want to hear that with enthusiasm. Do you feel educated?
Yes.
Okay, what did you learn? What was the newest, most cutting edge information that you found in this video? Something that you were not aware of. Obviously, we've all heard of various conspiracy theories about what happened on 9/11. By the way, we are not interested in conspiracy theories. We are very much interested in conspiracy facts. Keep that in mind. So let's get some feedback from you. Come on, you're
Just,
supposed to have formulated ideas. Yeah.
all
Mike.
the military bases in the country, or the world.
That was interesting, wasn't it? 70% of the world is practically occupied by us. What else? Anybody else? Hey, Deshaun.
That Afghanistan, that all of those places where those blue fields, oil fields.
Yes. The Caspian region.
Yeah, where all those
Persian
blue
Gulf.
fields are, and that's exactly what we have.
What was interesting in that map? What was the country in the middle of all that?
Saudi Arabia.
No.
Iran.
Iran. Iran is the only place they don't have control over. I read an article that said Iran and two other countries are the three only countries in the world that the Rothschilds don't have complete financial, you know the Rothschilds are, right? That's another story by itself. The Rothschild family, the pillars of the global banking institution, don't have complete control over. That's another thing for you guys to consider. Anything else that stood out? I like the quote that one of the gentlemen in the think tank in Washington said. He said the term conspiracy theory is a derogatory label. It's an epithet, an imposed label, something that the propagandists have perfected over decades. It is a useful tool.
The counter-gang shooting, the low-intensity
Yes.
operation.
That British general, Brigadier General, what was his name? Anyone have his name down? I wrote it down somewhere here. He wrote a book. Where did I write it? Huh? Yes, Kitson, that's right. He wrote a book on. Where's my note on that? Anyway, on subversion. Major General Frank Gitson on pseudo-gang, counter-gang parallels. So they found a legitimate cause. They create a pseudo-gang or a counter-gang that mimics, right? Remember the contagion thing we talked about in the lecture earlier? It mimics the same behavior, nevertheless, it's very much an extended arm of the propagandists to delegitimize the other appropriate cause. I thought that was brilliant. Anything else on
One
that?
of the first questions we always ask when we watch a documentary is, why is this thing brought up more often? So I think they address that nicely with the politicians, that if it's not something they can do good or something that they're trying to do bad, they wouldn't bring it up.
So what is that? What is the answer to that question? I think that's question number. Which one is that? Number 5. Why are media and politicians silent on peak oil scenario?
Because if they bring up the topic, it requires them to come up with some solutions.
That's it. Yeah.
If they don't have the solutions, it's just going to make them look bad. Plus, the whole point of peak oil is they don't want to scare people into spending less. So you're just exacerbating that, starting it off early by bringing it up earlier without a solution.
Yeah. Deshaun.
Another, the Patriot Act. How they said that they brought up the Patriot Act in advance. So, when the civil unrest and when everything happens because of the peak oil, they already have something in place.
Yeah. And that's exactly what was the intent. I mean, weren't you guys surprised that just a few days after 9/11, suddenly they had the 600-page bill already ready to go and got passed in the middle of the night? Wasn't that suspicious to you? Anybody heard of a document called Camp FEMA? One person. That's shameful. In academia, you should all watch that. Go to Google on YouTube and watch this documentary. They're building city-sized concentration camps. When the social order breaks down, they already are prepared to allocate millions of people even into this camp. So the plan is very much underway. And not because they have a diabolic agenda, but when the social order breaks down because of peak oil theory, or some people call it peak oil fact, they need to be able to control order. So there's some legitimate cause into that. By the way, did you all know the second arm or the second area of Halliburton Corporation's revenues come from? The first one is oil services. The second one is, does anyone know? Huh?
Government?
It's government subcontract.
Yeah, but in what area? Does anyone know? No.
Oh,
Prison industry.
Prison?
Prison industry.
I was going to say,
Okay?
they provide all the security forces.
Right, that's one of them. But the second biggest area of oil services is within continental United States, and I'm sure abroad as well, is prison industry. So that goes hand in hand with the assertions of Camp Fremont. Anybody else who found something that really stood out for you here? What about the numbers they threw out? That the current oil consumption is around 84, oil production is about 84 million barrels a day. And the absolute maximum production would be 95 million barrels a day, right? And the fact that we have reached oil peak, but we reached it before. I mean, we have already passed that. Huh?
Is that just in the U.S.?
It was global. Yeah, it was global. Right? We actually reached peak oil in the 70s.
It's 84 billion a day worldwide.
Huh?
84 billion worldwide.
I'm not sure about that.
Just
Somebody
in,
can.
just in the U.S., we consume
Yeah.
about 160 billion a day.
Right. It's good. 84 billion and 95 billion maximum capacity.
Right.
So
Currently, Saudi Arabia has the largest crude reserves, 266 billion barrels.
right,
Iran falls second with crude reserves.
right.
And what's really scary is that Saudi Arabia is now offshore drilling.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they have the largest reserves, they're trying to find more, and they're investing a lot of their capital into alternative energy
Right.
for their own use.
Right. Now, why would they do that? If they have all these
So they
proven
make-
reserves,
so
why
they
would they
make-
actually incur the cost of, which is very costly, proving offshore, deep sea drilling? Why would they do that unless they run out? We have reached the point of peak oil since 2010 or 2009, and we are past the point of no return right now. Sometimes between 2010 and 2015, it's going to be the fan. And we have the rapid industrialization and growth of the BRICS nation, right? BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So whoever controls the outflow or distribution of oil is the person who will control the pace of advancement in these upcoming superpowers. And most people are not even talking about that. Yes, somebody else had their hand up. What else stood out for you here? The fact that it takes 10 calories of fossil fuel for 1 calorie of food. Did you guys catch that interesting statistic? 10 calories of fossil fuel to produce 1 calorie of the food that we eat. The miracle of the 21st century only took place because of cheap oil. Where was oil originally found? Where was oil originally discovered and by whom? The Rockefellers in the fields of western Pennsylvania. Right? We discovered oil here. That was, by the way, one of the biggest incentives for the Civil War in the 1960s. That's distant past. We suffer in this country from a symptom of memory loss or amnesia. We forget that the cause of almost every war around the world has not been based on idealistic goals and values. It's been over competition of valuable resources. Oil being the most valuable resource. Felipe.
As fast as we grew, with all the oil we had, cheap oil, we didn't go down that fast in 100 years.
It's 100 years. We're looking at a decade.
Yeah.
We're looking at declines within a decade. And all our forecasts point out to the fact that we cannot come up with enough alternative energy fast enough to replace our need for fossil fuels. Now, fossil fuels are a large category. We're talking coal. We got plenty of coal. We got plenty of natural resources, right? I mean, natural gas. We're talking about actual petroleum. That's we're running out of, or the demand for it has far surpassed the supply of it. That's the dilemma that we're dealing with. Now this is not, when you start panicking, when you hear scenarios, these apocalyptic scenarios like this, put a pause on that. Stop yourself. Because humanity in the past has faced situations like this. For those of you who are of religious persuasion, you can find plenty of examples like this in the Bible. In the Old Testament, we talk about Joseph forecasting the fact that there was going to be 7 years of famine in Egypt. And what was the solution? They were building huge silos, and they were restoring during the 7 rich years for the 7 years of famine, right? So this is not a dire stress situation. People who use these scenarios to scare you are essentially the ones that want to control you. Because when they scare you, they essentially paralyze you. When they paralyze you, you're sucked out of any willpower to make a change. You can no longer speak truth to power. So don't lose hope, and don't lose the fact that don't underestimate the human ingenuity in solving this problem. This is a man-made problem, and there will be man-made solutions to it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you that the solutions have been around for the past 50 years. Since the 60s, we've had very viable solutions for alternative energy that have been successfully suppressed by energy companies. Intentionally. Because that would have taken away money from your market share. Right? So the solutions are out there. Something interesting that I read a few weeks ago was that Castro apparently has a car that runs on seawater. Right? There's all these technologies that have been suppressed by these evil oil companies. Of course, that took no vision whatsoever, right? If you are trading a commodity that's running out, wouldn't you want to invest in alternative technology just so you could sustain the operations of your own company instead of fighting it and suppressing it? So we have an issue of short-term orientation versus long-term orientation. Something that's been the theme of this class, if you were paying attention. Anything else that really stood out for you in this documentary? I want to get some nice feedback. How about some of the answers to the questions above? What do you think of, should we even be concerned about peak oil? I mean, that's already given by this point. I don't even want to go over that. What about discussing the relationship between peak oil scenario and the economic value that secures our American debt structure, or what we call factor X? Did anybody pick that up? Did anybody figure that out, or was that too complex?
It was very brief.
Very brief. Okay, so basically what factor S, or this American debt structure is, that is our debt is basically funded through cheap oil. People think the dollar is a fiat currency. The fiat currency is actually not a currency. It's a commodity, and that commodity is what? Oil. So when the price of oil goes up drastically, and you have been seeing that. How much are you guys paying? I mean, it's been coming down for the past couple of weeks to, $3.80 now, they say, although I haven't filled anything past $4.25. You've seen this crazy drastic, when Obama got into office, it got down to $2.20, and then it went back to $5, and now it's like back to $4.20. If you look at the actual X and Y axis on that, it's drastically on the rise. So this is an actual threat to our national security. Peak oil is a threat to our national security because our debt is funded through cheap oil. That price of oil goes up, how are we going to fund the debt? How are we going to fund our debt? That's what we mean by factor X. The reason they call it factor X is purely unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. 3 things you need to know about international political economy is fractional reserve banking, right? That's the first one. Second one is what is fiat currency, and the third one is what is compound interest. I'm just whetting your appetite. I won't get into it in this lecture because those are deeply complex issues.
Can you say it again?
Fractional reserve banking, compound interest, and what exactly is fiat currency. I'll just get into it really quickly. Fractional reserve banking is that all the money that's deposited in every bank account in the world is not there. That the banks only keep a fraction of those reserves in the bank. Which means if there's a run on the banks like there was in 1929, they're not going to have enough money to give out. because the money is in the wheel of the economy and it's being lended. That's fractional reserve banking. Fiat currency is basically means you're printing money. You choose one currency. Up to now it's been the euro and the dollar, but primarily the dollar, and everything is more or less traded in this currency. Those of you who think we don't have a single world currency, or if that's some kind of an apocalyptic scenario, guess what? We've been having practically a single world currency, and that's been the dollar. The euro was supposed to support the dollar, and we all are seeing what's happening to the euro. It's on the verge of collapse. Same thing could happen to the dollar. And the third complex is compound interest. That I won't get into that in this lecture. What about question number 4? Is there going to be an oil decline? How will it affect our economic growth? Do you think there has been an oil decline? There has been an oil decline for the past 2-3 years. How is it going to affect our economic growth, especially in a situation where we are really struggling with our economic growth? We're looking at 1 to 3% growth every year, which is dismal. So it's definitely going to, damper the economic growth. What about question number 5? Oh, did we talk about that a little bit? What about number 6? This is where I want to get a lot of feedback from Chris, from Rick, from people that I know what they're talking about. But I want to hear participation from you guys. In your opinion, what lies ahead and what can be planned and or prepared for the suggested consequences? What are the suggested consequences that were given in this documentary?
Talk about high levels of unemployment.
High levels of unemployment.
Social unrest.
Social unrest. What else? Food shortage. The reason we have this abundance of food and this variety of food is because the cost of transporting that food half the way from around the world to Southern California is very cheap. Once that cost goes up, remember that from the documentary Collapse, we're going to have to go back to the localization model. Eventually, or essentially, for all practical means and purposes, globalization will be dead. Right? So that's another food shortage. What else?
No transportation.
No transportation. The reason we have the economy that we have is because we have a very intricate and efficient transportation system. When the price of energy goes up, we won't be able to transport goods or services. How are we going to function as a society? Another one that you can think of. Jeff, can you think of another one? Another consequence for what lies ahead? We talked about social unrest, food shortage, economic depression. An economic depression that's going to make 1929 look like a walk in the park. That's the level of economic depression we're talking about. David.
If you look at the population of the world and the production of oil, they mirror each other.
Yes.
And so if we get to the point where we have no oil, we have no way to provide food, we have no way to provide services, you're going to see a drastic decline in the population of the world overnight.
Yes. Absolutely. There's a nice curve from that paper that you wrote that you showed me. The population of growth was more or less steady until the mid-1800s. The more we got closer to the standardization of energy and the advent of cheap petroleum, the population went skyrocketed. Only in the past 100 to 120 years. Skyrocketed. Where we went from...
Just in the last 10 years, we've gone from 1 billion to 7 billion people.
From what?
In just the last 2 decades,
Yeah.
we've gone from 1 billion to 7 to 8 billion people in the world because of
Cheap oil. Yeah. Cheap oil has brought all these benefits, but only for a short period of time. Remember what made the dinosaurs go extinct? They were the king of the earth.
asteroids.
Well, besides the asteroids, they couldn't adapt to the new reality. That's what's going to happen to us if we don't quickly adopt an adaptive culture. This means the American dream or the American way of life, which I hate to tell you, it's the culture of waste and mindless spending, is over as we know it. Is over as we know it. So all of us, each one of us, has to make drastic changes to our lifestyle because of peak oil, because of the ending of cheap petroleum. I look around, I mean, some of you are just worried sick. Nicole is like panicking over here. No, you're not. I'm just kidding. I kid Nicole. Right? But we have to prepare an entire change to our paradigm, to our reality, to our way of life, to our cultural habits, our expenditure habits, our travel habits. Going to have to go back to public transportation most likely. We won't get to have these 8-cylinder cars that have 25 miles per gallon. Right? What else did you pick up from this? I want to hear more back from you. So some of you picked up on some really good stuff. I mean, I'm really impressed by Deshaun picking up on that pseudo-gang, counter-gang scenario. What else did you pick up? Did you pick up on Samuel Huntington? He's the father of neoconservatism. All of these people came out of the University of Chicago for some reason. I don't know what they're doing in the University of Chicago that produces these type of people. I don't know if Chicago, great town. Alex comes from that. But he wrote a book called Clash of Civilizations, which became the thesis for this think tank known as the Project for the New American Century, something you should all be familiar with. They lay down the policy for the next 100 years. The people who were in that think tank were Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, some of these other people that served under Bush administration. It's an absolute wholesale policy of militarization of the world and how we can control or maintain our empire in the next 100 years to come. This is another thing that I read that came in this documentary that I found quite interesting. The moral of the story is that denial is what? It's a defensive condition. We have to rise above it to catch a breath in order to catch fresh air, in order to catch different perspective. We have to rise above denial. And denial seems to be something that is very convenient. What about all that stuff on 9/11? First of all, was any of it new to you? Was any of it new or not? We've all heard of the things that talk about 9/11 behind that. Yes?
So, I was going to say that they've been talking about the whole like bombing from below. I guess that happened like 6 or 7 years prior. They had caught, I don't remember who it was, but there were like 5 guys trying to blow up one of the towers from the base.
Uh-huh.
They were like planting explosives. And
Yeah.
they got arrested and probably taken like federal prison or something. But it happened, and
So they were doing the testing
they
something,
had
right?
already tried to do that, and then the whole Twin Towers thing happened. And that was what sparked the whole, you think it was explosives from below, because look, we have been trying to plant explosives like in cars, and it was the whole, it was like that one movie, Fight Club, where they like had a van with explosives.
And it ran into
they
the
put them inside the building,
Yeah.
like on the infrastructure.
Right.
So it would like take it down from the support.
But that's not the
Yeah, but they
definition of
got caught.
implosion,
Yeah.
right? If they did that, the building wouldn't fall down.
No,
The
and
skeleton would still
they-
stand up.
I guess something had gone off, and they proved that even the explosives they used, which was like C4 or something,
Right.
wasn't strong enough to
bring down the
to
building.
bring down the building, and all it did was like shake a little bit.
Yeah.
And that was, whatever pounds of C4 going off at the base of like one corner.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, so you can do that, and the building doesn't go down, but
Yeah.
you like hit it with the same amount of force
Yeah.
on top,
Yeah.
where it's
Theoretically, it's impossible,
goes down.
right? Theoretically, it's impossible. What about before I get to Deshaun, what about that piece where it said within 4 months, all the evidence, which was the molten steel, was chopped up and sent to Korea, India, and China. And they called it that was the biggest,
Cover up.
not cover up, they call it that was the biggest destruction of prime evidence in human history. Did you guys catch that? Well, did that blow your mind or what? Why would there be this sudden need for steel in these countries? And why would that still come from the evidence of the crime scene? Deshaun, and then we get to, Deshaun, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about the fighter jets that they told all be in training or some kind of operation that day. That all of them were.
You mean to send the molten steel to China?
No, I'm talking about, it said something about on the day of 9/11 that why, the fighter jets didn't come.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that they were on some kind of military training.
Exercise. There was 13 concurrent military exercises, and they couldn't get to the epicenter, which was a minute or two, with an F-16 in time. That was another interesting circumstantial evidence. Again, if you had factual evidence, people would be behind prisons right now. But there's all this circumstantial evidence that is unavoidable. You cannot, pull the blind, over your eyes and imagine it doesn't exist.
Yeah, speaking of that, I remember reading, I don't remember, it was like the Wall Street Journal or something a while ago, how China, or some company, China bought the Hummer recently, or within the last like 5 years or whatever, from General Motors. like
Uh-huh.
the patent board or whatever it is, and they actually were somehow not caught, but like there was some whole scandal where they were using like steel from, or what they claimed to have been steel from the Twin Towers to make Hummers
Yeah.
as like vehicles, like I forget what they call it, because they were supposed to be used as transportation, but they were making like military vehicles.
Interesting.
And it was just this whole funny, not funny, but like kind of depressing. Because they were saying like, you know, this is wrong, not because you're making these military vehicles,
Yeah.
but because it's steel from the Twin Towers. And like, that's disrespectful. I was just like, wait, what? Like, how
Where's
do
the
you
logic
know
in
that
that?
in the first place?
Yeah.
There's so much steel going around, you can't know where the steel's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, once it's in there, it's gone.
So what I want you to keep in mind, okay? Keep your eyes on Iran. Whatever happens to Iran, whatever fabrication and lie and exaggeration and distortion they come up with Iran will determine the next big war. Iran is the last untapped energy resource country around the world. Second largest producer of petroleum and also the second reserve of natural gas. Keep your eyes on Iran. It is absolutely crucial and detrimental as far as what kind of lie they're going to come up with, what kind of pretext they're going to create, before they attack that country. Or worse, have another country in the region attack Iran and in order to keep it a regional war, which nevertheless are going to have terrible repercussions as far as how much you pay for the price of, for a gallon of oil here at the gas station. Okay? I want to thank you for your patience and give yourself a round of applause.
You can say what you have to say, 'cause my mind's made up anyway. I'm taking the high road, going above you. This is the last time that I'm gonna trust you. You can say what you have to say, 'cause my mind's made up anyway. All that bullshit you talk might work a lot, but it's not gonna work today.
You people are running off the mouth, trying to make me take myself off safety, trying to make my friends turn their backs on the team we built, building up some mistaken information, and I can't take this.